Alrighty, welcome to this. I'm not going to call it discussion, but it's just going to be a quick presentation Alrighty. On the xenophobia in South Africa. Well, I am actually not going to use the word xenophobia. I'm going to use Afrophobia because technically, if you look at what's going on in South Africa, it is not a xenophobia. Um, Activity, but it's what I would want to call Afrophobia because most of the people who are being targeted are happens to be Africans or Black people who are supposed to be a part of the continent. I've seen a couple of videos on social media. Um, People have made certain statements, um, but I'm gonna take it from this angle. This is an issue that needs to be looked at um, passionately, but again, intellectually. So when people go through pain, when people go through trauma, as um, South Africa went through during the apartheid period, the aftermath of such event comes with serious consequences. And some of the consequences that comes with such a painful experience. We're just going to look at one today. It's self-worth. In other words, you can say um, an identity crisis or inferiority complex. I know most initially when I saw some of the videos, I was very angry. But then I decided to look at it from the intellectual point of view, from psychological point of view, from philosophical point of view. And I realized that it's a serious issue that needs to be looked at, not from the point of emotions and anger towards some of the people. Not all the people in South Africa, mind you, happens to be displaying this um, uncouth behavior, let me put it that way. Um, it's just a small section of people from the KwaZulu-Natal province who are misbehaving um, based on their lack of education. I'm going to touch on that, you know. So we need to, this is a serious and a critical issue that needs to be looked at, not just to the South African government, but Africa as a whole needs to look at what's going on in South Africa and deal with it because it's certain aspects of inferiority complex is going on in Africa. So when people come out of this trauma, like the apartheid system, one of the things it leaves behind that needs to be dealt with when you read the book, Carter Jean Woodson's book, The Miseducation of the Negro. It talks about the fact that when you control the mind of somebody, the mind, as I always term it, as the hard drive of your being. When somebody controls the hard drive of your being, the person controls the entire future of you. And so when the hard drive is altered in the sense of not having a self-worth, you would not be able to translate that worth to another person. So what is going on in South Africa is an issue of identity crisis. And identity crisis have to be dealt with educationally. I'm not talking about schooling, I'm talking about education. When you look at the activists, the so-called nationalist activist, you realize that when they speak, you come to understand that they lack education. They're not educated. But somebody might be thinking, well, they speak good English. I hear one of them happens to be a journalist. You see, education goes beyond speaking good English or learning how to read and write. That is literacy. Literacy simply means you learn how to read and write. So you can speak good English, but that does not mean you're educated. Education should it's developing the capacity to harness and develop your potentials to serve the needs of your community. So education goes beyond just learning how to read and write and speaking good English and what have you. As a matter of fact, you might not even know how to read and write, but still be educated, because when you're able to harness and enlighten yourself to develop your potentials to serve the needs of your environment or the needs of your community, that is the essence of education. And that is what African leaders lack in putting proper structures in place to develop this system to be able to help move Africa forward. And that is what it's needed. I would say most of the African countries lack this. When you look at Rwanda and you see education has to be systematic and it has to be intentional. It's not just putting the program and curriculum in place just to see people through stage one, two, three, four, write an exam and go to the next stage and go to the university, come out and find some job to do. That is not education. That is schooling. And schooling takes you through a process where you become a tool. I want to repeat myself. Schooling takes you through a process. You are told what to do, a process of being taught to become a tool for the system. Again, I say schooling takes you through a process. You are taught, and at the end of the day, you become a tool for the system. That is why after schooling, the system would have to tell you now you have to apply for a job. Now the system will have to give you a job. And now this is how much you're being paid. And this is how much vacation time you have. And this is when you can take your vacation. And this is when you have to retire. That is the schooling system. And the schooling system is a system that was put in place by the colonizers to be able to use as a tool to fulfill their agenda. And now the colonizers are no longer in Africa. So African leaders will have to sit up and begin to understand the importance of education. Our development is going to be based on the restructuring of our educational system. That is why I always applaud Rwanda. It was a deliberate and a systematic attempt by the government, Paul Kagame's government, to be able to structure the education in such a way that they were able to eliminate tribalism. It was intentional. It was systematic. It was a program they had to follow, educational program they had to follow to be able to wipe out tribalism in Rwanda. And so South African leadership, as well as African leadership, would have to structure and be intentional about educating the African child to harness their potential to be able to serve the needs of their community. And when you are enlightened, you would not do what these people are doing to their fellow brothers and sisters in South Africa. When you're enlightened and you got to understand that your potential, your everything you have within you, your gift is meant for the development of your community. It's meant for the development of humanity. It is meant for the development of your environment. And in this sense, your environment is South Africa, your environment is Africa, your environment is humanity. So if you come to understand this concept of education, you will not behave like this. And I hope that we'll look at this from this perspective. African leadership must sit up and begin to understand and draft programs that will take care, that will change the mindset, that will harness the potential, that will be able to make people understand what education. And if you understand what education is, you understand the concept of love. I'm not going to talk about that today. When you understand education, you understand the concept of love. And so all you do is to develop your potentials to serve humanity. And so African leaders must sit up. South African leadership, please put systems, programs in place to educate our brothers and sisters. Educate our brothers and sisters for them to understand. You know, when you look at anybody who understands or who is enlightened, knows about the struggle South Africa went through, the times of apartheid, and that all of the African continent contributed in the fight against apartheid. Some Africans lost their lives in the fight against apartheid, even though they're not South Africans. There were troops that were sent, mercenaries, and a whole bunch. Monies went into it. Nigeria was at a point in time taxing its people just to make some money to be given to the fight, towards the fight against apartheid in South Africa. And so please, let's structure a program, educational program, right from the schools, the primary schools, for the kids to understand the importance of their potentials, their gifts, to harness those to serve the community and the environment they live in. Until we do that, this whole issue of Afrophobia is going to come up year after year after year, and it's going to be an unending cycle. And so I just want to throw my 2 cents into this, looking at this issue from an intellectual point and from a psychological point. There's a statement that hurt people hurt people. You know, these people don't know any better. No matter how fluent they may seem in the English language, they don't know any better. They're not educated. They're not enlightened. The words that comes out of their mouth makes you know that they don't even understand what they're saying. They don't even understand the dynamics of the economics of the environment they live in. They don't even understand the dynamics of the social structure of the environment they live in. And so I want to plead with the African leadership, especially South Africa. Let's put a program in place to psychologically clean up the hard drive of some of these people, to free them from that concept, the colonial concept. You know, the reason why they attack only Black people is because of identity crisis. So anytime you have an identity crisis, anybody who looks just like you becomes a target because you don't even love yourself as a Black person. You don't love yourself as an African. And so when you see another African, you vent out on that person. It's an inferiority complex. That is why they don't take it to any other race but their own race. They don't love themselves that much because they don't know any better. So let us educate ourselves to be able to develop our continent as a whole. And when we educate ourselves, African unity will be a possibility for Africa. Thank you.